don't say anything, what is the responsibility of the HRD minister to himself and to the nation?
Okay. You
said that the parliament was supreme.
Please also identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Rao, Venkatesh Rao. I'm a lawyer, a Supreme Court lawyer. Most people. Mr. Shashi Tharoor said that parliament was supreme, and it's in that relation that I wanted him to stay on while I made this comment. I don't think he's quite correct there. We've seen over the years in the courts that from being protector of the constitutional right of freedom of press, the court has gradually moved to regulate it. Good old days when the government had a say in the appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court, they have freed themselves of that. Everything practically has landed in the courts. The courts are, in a way, running the government, so to speak, on every issue. Now we've got and put our freedom of press in their hands as well. And Mr. Vinod Mehta's experience shows he was there for 15 years. And if this
17 years.
17 years, I stand corrected. And if we were to do that further on the question of the freedom of press, I don't know what would happen. Okay. I think the courts are rather overburdened. Let's free them of regulating the press also. Thank you.
You wanted to say something? Yes.
I don't know which category you will put me in. Former soldier, spokesperson, military spokesperson, and now write for the last 13 years columns weekly and monthly. Mr. Tharoor, do you think the government is taking enough pains to keep the media, particularly foreign media in India, informed on all issues, with particular reference to those of national security, international relations related? Because this question is from Mr. Denner also. Early 90s, one saw that the foreign media, which is in fair strength there, was very poorly informed by the government about what was happening in Jammu and Kashmir, in the northeast. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
To say is, I gave an honest answer as to what I believe were the choices confronting the minister. Certainly, as far as any minister of the government of India is concerned, he is accountable to Parliament in the first place, and Parliament is, to that degree, supreme. Perhaps the courts can do otherwise, but this is not a matter that was going to come to court. It was a matter where he was on the spot, on the mat, and had to respond. And I think that it's clear that the mechanism will be that presumably, I hope, a serious credentialed committee of academics will review this textbook, that the withdrawal will only be in order to vet things that are capable of causing offence, and that the book will soon, or a book or something very much like it, will soon be back in circulation. But I must say that the aspect of the thin skin that we all mentioned, whether it's something that just the political class has or not, the political class does appear to be able to whip up a lot of public sentiment in its favour on a number of issues. Perhaps not this specific one, but in very many others. And I think one of the reasons that those who get offended by anything, paintings, movies, books, cartoons, one of the reasons they have any potency in our political space is because they are deemed to be capable of whipping up public passions behind that sense of being offended. So let us be very honest with ourselves and say that no realistic politician, let alone a government minister, is going to be able to willfully ignore these sentiments, particularly if they threaten to get out of hand. And in this particular instance, as I said, the additional complication is the impression that this that was causing offence was not the work of some private individual, but in a government-approved textbook. And that puts a particular onus on the minister that I think you really have to take seriously in terms of his concerns. I think I've covered it. Oh yes, on the last point, quite simply, I'm the wrong one to ask this question since I'm not a foreign journalist. I have no idea what the government is saying to foreign journalists. As far as the domestic press is concerned, the ones who do cover national security issues, I get the impression they have very good access at all levels of both bureaucracy and government.
Access vis-a-vis being informed properly.
Yeah, well, beyond that, I think Simon Denny would be the right person to tell you whether he feels he gets the kind of information that he needs to respond to foreign questions. Thank you all, and again, renewed apologies for later arrival, early departure.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Simon Denny, would you like to comment?
That's supreme for me anyway.
Sure. I mean, I'll comment. I mean, in terms of does the media keep people well informed? Just leaving aside national security for a second, I'll come to that in a second. You know, I was talking to Baron Mitra, who's in the audience today, about the land issue. I think journalists here did a very good job of highlighting that there was a problem with unfair acquisition of land. They perhaps didn't do a very good job of explaining properly what the issues were and the way that it should be solved, but they did a good job of highlighting that there was a problem here that needed to be solved. In terms of does the, informing the foreign press, I lived in Pakistan for 2 years before I came here, and I have to say that the Pakistanis were more determined in wooing the foreign press to convince them of their point of view. There was a much more access, there was a more determined effort to give people access and to try and convince them that their point of view was correct. When I came here, I was a little bit surprised. I expected to come here and say, and I have to be a little careful what I say, but I expected to come here and for people to say, oh, you come from Pakistan, let us brief you on what's being, let's convince you of what our point of view. And there wasn't as much interest in doing that as I thought there perhaps ought to have been, actually. And having said that, that's not a blanket statement. There's some extremely good people who do a very good job of briefing me now. So it's not at all meant as a blanket statement. But in terms of access, there's a story on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act last year. I couldn't get anybody from the Army or Defence Ministry to pick up the phone despite repeated attempts to get them to put across their point of view. And that really shouldn't have happened.
Okay, thank you. All right, we started 15 minutes late. We ended 15 minutes later. Some of our panelists...
That lady wants to ask a question there.
Oh, yeah? You want to ask a question? Yeah. Okay, so I thought we'll just take a few more questions.
I want to know what constitutes media independence. Is it the fact that media should define its own standards, or is it enforcement?
You
Because
do identify
considering...
yourself, Ruchi?
Yeah, my name is Ruchi Gupta. I read newspapers.
Ruchi, we have to have a different seminar for that question that you asked. What is independence?
No, but that's part of the question that media independence, if you should have the right to define your own standards, because media people should do that. However, in enforcement, I find that since every single paper dabbles in really dubious reporting, dubious practices, I feel it would be subject to some kind of you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of enforcement.
Okay. You wanted to say something? Yeah.
Mr. Mehta talked about we need a body which will self-regulate all the journalists, or a body to be formed. But working in the television media, I've never seen any editor, or for that matter any journalist, to be critical of other television editor or journalist. Is there a fear that it will open a can of worms if some editor, or some journalist kind of exposes other journalists? So is that the reason this self-regulation hasn't come the way it should have? What do you think about this question to Mr. Mehta?
Yeah. You wanted to say something? Yes, please.
I think I've better heard.
No, please speak into the microphone. We are recording everything.
Okay, great. So I'm representing a company called Exchange for Media here, and I'm also putting together the News Broadcasting Awards this year. And while doing that, I was intrigued by something that I found, which was that in the past few years, as far as newsprint goes and as far as news broadcasting goes, there's a lot of prominence which social media has taken, which necessarily means that it does get or grab the eyeballs. But the point is, how does a particular publication, which also means that it works for the corporate or the person who's investing in that particular organization. But what are the specific issues that get highlighted, or what is it that a specific social issue needs to have in it that needs to get that highlighted?
All right. Okay, yeah. You and